Hello, Gaston County. Welcome to episode number 158 of Gaston's Great, a podcast highlighting some of the great things happening in and around Gaston County as far as I know. Well, this is really starting off great. I'm your host, Stephen Long. We're coming to you, I think, once again from the international headquarters, all right, of GSM Services right here in downtown Gastonia. We have another great guest. We have a guest today. We have a guest today. We're very happy to have Greg Dills on the podcast. Greg is the owner of Page Power System. However, that's not the only reason we have Greg on. Unfortunately for Greg, we go way back, all the way back to Sherwood Elementary School. That's been a few years ago. We just discovered before we started recording, it's twice Rachel's life, at least, that we've known each other. Wow. I don't feel old at all. Regardless, Greg, it's great to have you on, and welcome back. I said welcome back to the podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I'm already crying for some reason, as you can see from the laughter we had beforehand. So, as normal, we'll see how this one goes. Maybe we should go ahead and apologize to Pam and Janet before we get started.
Probably good move.
So, Greg, in all seriousness, tell us, the first question is always one of my favorites. To just tell us a little bit about yourself, family, professional, anything you'd like to share for our listeners.
Okay. My name is Greg Dills. I lifelong resident of Gastonia. As Stephen said, went to elementary school together, middle school, high school. I've been with either dating or married to my wife Pam since 1992. So been married 27 years and dating. We have two children. Abigail, 23, just recently graduated Clemson, and a son Eli, rising senior at North Carolina School of the Arts. And Pam and I own a electrical contracting business here in town. We are mainly a utility electrical contractor. We kind of changed our business 8 or 10 years ago. It's been a lot better for my mental health. So.
Yeah, and listen, you're in spite of their father, you have two really terrific kids.
1.5.
Wow,
they're terrific. But,
yeah. Well, they got a good mother, so
yeah.
just like my kids.
They had a half a chance.
They looked. Yeah, that's right. They lucked out on at least that side. So, Greg, kind of share. How did you end up here? How did the business that you're in, and we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but how did you end up in this line of work, and what led you to where you are today? Or is it just serendipitous like so many other situations?
It totally just happened. It was not planned. I graduated Ashbrook and was going to Gaston College. My plan was to be a business major and become a banker, if you can imagine that. While when there I was working part-time for my uncle's electrical contracting business here in town. I knew early on I wanted to own my own business. I'd always had a goal to have it by 30. I would own my own business of something. About 1990, 91, if you remember, with the same age, the job market wasn't great.
Yeah.
And I was making more working part-time in the electrical business than I would people I knew who were graduating with the business degree were making, I thought. And my uncle made
and you can add. And
yeah, I can do math.
Yeah.
Simple math. My uncle had made me an offer one time and said, "Do you ever think about working here when you graduate?" I said, "No, I don't really want to do that." He said, "Well, I don't mean in the field. I mean in the office." I said, "Well, we'll see what happens." And right, wrong, or indifferent, I was preparing to transfer to Appalachian and wasn't happy with school. Didn't think I was learning anything, and I was paying for my way. So I made the fateful decision that I was not returning to school. And I showed up for work on a Monday and said, "I'm here." And he said, "That wasn't the offer." So
I didn't know that.
That's how it occurred. And over the next 3 years, I got way more of a business education and a life education than I would have gotten. And at the time, I didn't appreciate the time. I thought, why in the world am I getting treated like this? Because I had cousins in the business. They were younger. But he made me do everything that needed to be done there to figure out everything involved. And I didn't realize how much I appreciated it until he fell over dead one day, just randomly on a Sunday. And I found myself as the president I was vice president before he died of operations at John Beister Incorporated. He just, actually right before we got married, I was out of town for my bachelor party, came in and got back that Sunday and said, "Well, he had a heart attack and died today." And we we had 105 employees. And
Holy moly! I didn't realize
in
that.
6 states, and I was like, huh. So,
I remember and knew about. I remember that about him
but it was
passing. But I didn't know y'all had that many teammates.
We had a pretty good sized operation. We were doing a lot of water and wastewater, same thing I do now, and doing commercial buildings all over town and like shopping centers. So we had crews from Ocean City, Maryland, to Knoxville, Tennessee, and Jacksonville, Florida. So we were pretty spread out. So at 27, I had to learn a lot quick.
So basically, you went from one day to the next being in charge.
Yeah, I'd been before that. I was just the kind of operations guy.
But you were running things probably a little. Is that fair to say? But you weren't the final word.
I was doing zero estimating. I didn't have any clue of the financial side of it. I knew the business we were doing, but I spent the next 3 weeks before I got married digging through files and teaching myself to estimate, and worked out for a while.
It's amazing. My experience. It's amazing what we can do when we're forced.
Oh yeah,
to do that, right? It seems like we put things off. But that story's similar. Something we don't share very often. But basically, our father, Joel, and our dad had the same situation. He went from running a roofing crew to basically being in charge the next day. I mean, it's a little more complicated than that, but that is because my grandfather had a heart attack, and this was back in early 70s. So it's interesting. It's just interesting. So looking back, I mean, what, because we one thing when we have community leaders like yourself here, and I mean that sincerely, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. We like to talk about leadership, community, family, how all those things tie together. So looking back now, sometimes I've learned that sometimes that being thrown to the fire actually, at the moment it doesn't seem like it, but later I've looked back and said, gosh, that actually might have been a better way to learn. Not always the case, but so looking back, what kind of leadership lessons did you learn through that time period, and then how has that evolved to today?
A lot of hard ones. I mean, because it was proportionally, I was probably doing 10% of the workload, and he's doing 90%, and that's probably
generous.
I'm
the
probably
10
generous with the 10. His wife, and he had the secretary in business was a partner. She had a 25% stake, and we had actually had conversations about me getting the 25%. And on the Friday before I left, we were having conversations about what that transition looked like, because she was about to retire, and I'm trying to decide, am I going to do my own thing or am I going to stay here, because I did have some cousins to deal with. So I had to learn to manage people. Still learning to do that. That's always a challenge. We kept the business going for a couple of years, and I had, at that point, had gotten married, and I needed to own something rather than do what I was doing, because it was rough, and we could not come to terms. I had talked to people, and every dime I could possibly scrape together, borrow, or whatever, and we were still a good ways apart. I had offers, because at that time everybody kind of knew what was going on, and I had some options. And I took one that it was because of John Elkins. He's from the club.
Yep.
Which I took that because, backing up, right after Jim died in February of '98, I joined our Rotary Club that May, because that's back when there's 2 spots. You had an active and an additional active. So John Elkins was the active, and Jim was the additional active. So I got invited to take his spot. Well, it gave me a chance to learn from John Elkins, who'd been running electrical business, which helped a lot. So over those 2 years, I leaned on John a lot, and then whenever I decided to leave, they shut the business down, and I went to work for someone else for a while. But basically, I spent 10 years as the operations person for 2 different groups of absentee owners, and got my feel at one point and took a jump.
Yeah, there's no question. I can't remember who I was talking to, gosh, over the last few episodes about all the things I learned through high school, college, super important, but I learned the majority of what I need to learn about life and being in business and working after I graduated college.
Right.
I mean,
actually doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I learned how to go solve problems on my own and live on my own, but everything else was after. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, I think I think I even used a quote one of those weeks about, I can't remember who said it, but something along the lines of, don't let your official education get in the way of your life education, right?
No
that
problem
you get.
here for that.
Yeah, right. So how was that decision in leading up to going out on your own?
Well, I had Jim was a great mentor.
A little closer.
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Jim was a great mentor to teach me about the business and the technical side. So I had customers. I had kind of developed relationships that I carried with me to Burco and or to the other company, I guess.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know what you meant. I know who you're talking
Whichever.
about. Yeah. It's all good.
So I had relationships built and had some options. And I thought, well, I can do this, and it went on for. I talked about it starting in 2004. Pam got tired of hearing it and said, "Just shut up or do it." And that's kind of what it went down to. And we had another mutual friend who, over lots of evening conversations, said, "No, you don't do that. Stay where you're at and just do something on the side." And I'm like, "No, it's not what I'm after." So we just did it, and I told Pam we had enough money to eat for a couple months. We'll see what happens. And so far, I've obviously not gone hungry. So it's.
So what year was that?
2008.
Okay.
March of 2008, and I thought, because it had been 10 years, I thought, well, we should have done this a long time ago. And you know what happened in September of 2008?
Yeah.
So we had a lot of.
You weren't doing any residential new construction at the time, were you?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
No, we were doing.
Which was helpful, and my point there is that if you were in that market, that was a real disaster.
But the new housing drives a big piece of
Sure
my business
it does.
because we do the infrastructure for those new housing. So there's a lag. So we didn't hit that wall until late 2009, and we hit it. But I was committed at that point. We have 2 children, and one's about to start preschool. So, but it hasn't been a linear path, but we got through all that, and here we are today. So that's kind of the work part of it.
Well, before we move on, I'm going to just the big reveal here. Because I know the answer to this, but I'm going to make you answer anyway. Where did the name come from? Page Power.
I was struggling because I knew I was leaving, and I actually worked an 11-month notice for the second company.
Oh, wow.
Because I said, we'd had a meeting. I said, I've either got to have equity or I've got to leave because I had an agreement when I came to work there for equity, and it hadn't materialized. I was very frustrated about the last 10 years and what I had spent, and I knew by that point I had figured out the finances, and I knew the exact number of what I had produced and the net and gross profits of that. And I don't have any need to see my name on the side of a vehicle. And it's easier to sell on the back end at some point without your name on it. So I'm just driving on the road one day, and I called Pam, and I said, we're going to call it Page Power Systems because I'm not a big fan of electrical or lightning bolts in the name because it just gives a different connotation
Cliche.
to what we're doing.
Yeah, and it's also cliche, yeah.
And Page stands for Pam, my wife, Abigail, my daughter, Greg, me, and Eli, my son, because that's who I'm working for. So that's how it came up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the mission, right? That's the motivation to get up and do what you're doing.
That was my one stroke of marketing genius. From there.
And nobody knows the story. Everybody, at least 6 other people are going to know that now.
Yeah.
From listening to this.
2 of us already knew it. So
That's right.
4 at least.
And that counts the 3 people in this room. So if you're wondering how expansive, that's a great way to put it. The broad net here. So you've already mentioned Rotary. I also know of some of your involvement, say with the backpack program, your church, Gaston Day School. I know there's other things that you were involved with. So, how did that? What kind of spurred that on? Because so many people get up and go to work or start a business, and they're not really, they're not getting involved. So, what kind of spurred that on?
I grew up in scouting.
Okay.
And I was, I always didn't mind helping or doing things. That was never a problem. So I always liked to help people. But when I joined the Rotary Club, I've had this conversation several times. In 1998, all those guys, the boys of 24, they're all early 70s, mid 70s, and they were very sharp. And it was Bill Lawson and Jick Garland and Teet Pearson and Bynum Carter and
yes,
Don Lineberger, and you see these guys and what they had done and what they're doing, and you're like, well, I can certainly do something, whatever it is. There's more to life than working and making money. So that's where I kind of said, hey, this is what you need to be doing. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess I joined roughly 3 years later when I joined the Rotary Club. And my experience is when you hang around people doing things, or you see them making an impact, there is something about, okay, it's, what can I do? I want to go to Rotary every week. I want to be able to look them in the eye and say, yeah. Now, I was lucky too. My parents, that was kind of drilled into us here, is that the community has been good to us. So part of our business and civic responsibility is to give back to the community that's been so good to us.
Right.
Yeah.
And growing up, after my parents got divorced, Mom was doing her best to just keep us, heading on whatever path, and it's fine. But when you start having a little more, you can do more. You have an obligation to share it, I think, with people and do what you can to help them.
I just remember growing up when I was old enough to be like working here in the summers. I don't have the conversation came up, but something came up about as I was going to go to my own. Parents talking to me about tithing at the church and all this, and he said, and I remember, I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact conversation, but I remember Dad talking to me about, well, when you start having a little bit of success and things are going well, he goes, I was afraid not to tithe, right? Because that's a, but I think that's a metaphor for all the things that we have the opportunity to get involved with here in the community as well. So. Again, I appreciate you sharing because it's sometimes it's serendipitous, but sometimes it's intentional. Because I view us getting involved in Rotary as an intentional. That was intentional for me to see what else is out there. Of course, I had no idea. Because you and I both, right? A few years later, we're president of the club.
Right.
I never would have imagined that when I walked into Rotary.
No.
But that was a good, for me anyway. That was a good experience. To see kind of what else is going on in our community and what other people are doing. And that's what so that's kind of the point of having these discussions with people like you is maybe somebody's listening that is trying to figure that out too. And it's not as hard to get involved as some people think it is. No. I mean, it's you just have to, but you do have to take some action and go do something. So speaking professionally, speaking personally, speaking community-wise, is there something that stands out that you're most proud of being involved with, most proud of accomplishing, most proud of seeing happen here, that something you may have touched?
Lots of things, really, but just nothing super stands out professionally. It drives my kids crazy, but we can drive all over 3 or 4 states and it'll be on the side of the highway. We did that.
Oh, yeah.
We don't care, Dad. Well, whatever, but it's still there and it's providing service to someone. And, even going further back to shopping centers all over the place, which isn't a great deal, but to hear being involved with the Rotary, and Joel and I were involved on the committee to build the pavilion.
Oh, yeah,
So,
that's right.
I didn't have any ideas. Kid with a single parent struggling in 7th or 8th grade, that my name's on something here that's going to stand for a while. I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah.
Not on the top with the good important names, but down there at the bottom.
Yeah, not the big cap names.
Yes.
On a brick maybe or something, or on the plaque.
Right, and it's just part of being from somewhere, and just it proves that you were there. I guess I don't know, but it's you kind of amazed sometimes.
Well, it's kind of that. I mean, we're kind of getting old enough to where that word legacy comes to mind. I never thought I would say that, but that is something that is crossing my mind. 10 years ago, it sure wasn't.
No, and I don't think my name and that and legacy go in the same sentence. But you want to leave some proof that you were here in something. You didn't just exist and produce nothing and give nothing. And I don't know. To me, that's a wasted life. But that may be a little harsh, but that's kind of how.
Well, we're all about candor and harshness here.
Well, I know that you don't
just like at Rotary, especially at Rotary on Thursdays, we're the same way.
So, I guess that's just seeing things here.
Yeah.
That you had a part in making happen.
Yeah, that's a great point.
New Hope Road, back when we did commercial work, Joel and I worked on probably every building, bank, and doctor's office at the same time with various local contractors. And like, had a part in putting that up there, and the
Yeah.
building's still standing there. And so, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that's here and around. People are using it every day,
Right.
and it's a positive impact. What about anything that jumps out for you, key factor in your business success, your personal success, your community involvement? Anything that says, somebody's listening says, okay, this is something that I know this helped me get to where I am today.
Following through with your commitments, and there's been times when financially it'd be a whole lot better to just say this is not working, but no, whatever happens, you got to keep going. You got to finish the task at hand, whether that's a big work project or you're involved at Gaston Day and whatever you're doing. You need to see your work through. For me, that's the thing.
Is it fair to say too that some of your stage building and shenanigans with the Gaston Day Arts program is legendary?
There's a lot of skeletons that can be pulled up with some people, some stories. We were involved for a long time there, but
Yeah.
had a lot of fun. Met a lot of fun people and did some amazing things.
Well, that's a good example too. It was, you think it's just a school, but so many people utilize the art center there, right? And so many outside people are coming to see plays, for lack of a better. That's not my thing, but so it wasn't just the school children and families that were impacted.
Yeah, it wasn't my thing either. It's still technically not. I just do it because the family was involved in it and liked it, and it's what we did. I would have. That's not how I would have chosen to spend 10 years on, when it first popped up, but it worked out, and we did a lot of good stuff there, and it impacted a lot of people, and raised some money. And
yeah, I mean, I've been more than once. I didn't have any children there, but I've seen either children I know or been invited out there to see events and productions that were terrific. And I know other community organizations use it as well. I guess Gaston School of the Arts puts on stuff out there too. Yeah.
Nutcracker or something.
Yeah.
Just not to do with professional or community. The group that was doing, the parents who were doing the building, we were all didn't realize we didn't know anything, so we never said no to anything. Like, we could do anything. We thought we could, and somehow it worked. That it didn't collapse and kill a bunch of kids is kind of amazing sometimes.
Well, that's a good one because there's so many things in life that applies to business, especially, right? People, I've been asked before, well, how do you do that? I mean, what's y'all's business plan? And we do a little bit of business planning, but most of my normal answer is, we just go. We have these core values we try to follow, and then we just go do things and make sure we stay with our decisions we're making, stay with inside those core values. But we just go do things.
Right.
There's not as much planning involved as a lot of people might think.
It's been amazing now that Eli's actually going to school for what he was doing at Gastonia for scene design. We never had a plan. We never had anything. It was like, can you do this? I'm like, yeah, what do you want to look like? And it'd be some sketch there. And
why not?
Now he's got CAD drawings and dimension drawings. I'm like, heck, we could have done all kind of good stuff if we knew what we were doing. But it was a lot of trial and error. So it was a lot of fun.
It might have just saved some time. I bet it wouldn't have been any much different or much better.
Again, it's amazing what we did with what we didn't know.
So what's next for Greg in your view of the community and Page Power and things you're involved with, or your industry in general?
I'm rolling off. Well, I'm finishing up my term as chair at Backpack Food, so I've got 1 year post chair.
Okay.
I'm free off of that, and that's.
I don't think I knew you. I knew you were involved, and I don't think I knew you were the chair.
Yeah, Carolyn Niemeyer convinced me. I'd been on the board for a while, and she convinced me to.
She's very persuasive.
She does have a way of persuasion.
Yeah.
If you don't believe
in
me,
a positive. That's a positive.
That's Charlie.
Positive. Yeah.
And it is, and we've done that, and that program, our church is doing it, and Abigail says, "Well, why can't we? We should sponsor a school." Told her mother that, and next thing I knew, we're sponsoring a school. So then they were young, and we're packing groceries and volunteering and packing all the packages forever, and that's how we got involved with it. So the entire family's been involved in one way or another through the years with the program. So Pam's still on the fundraising committee for the gala every year, and So I'm rolling off that. So
I think I've got an email in my inbox right now.
not surprising. I don't get them. She just, you know.
Oh yeah.
She's,
When
she's
you're
the
on,
majority owner of the business, so she
Yeah.
writes whatever check she wants to write. So I need to find something else to do, community-wise. So I'm looking.
be careful. Hey, any organizations out there? If y'all just heard that, his number is 704. No, I'm kidding.
So work-wise, kind of got a date on the calendar when I want to not do this anymore, not do what I'm doing every day.
Okay.
We do something, but I want to get out of the grind.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes. So I've got that going on at some point. But industry-wise, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in this area. We've got all the growth coming here now, and for what we do and any construction-related thing, there should be 10 to 15 years of good opportunity.
Yeah, we're a long way off. Behind the scenes, I see things like AI impacting our businesses big time. But we're a long way off from not needing tradesmen to go out and do the work, tradespeople to go out and do the work.
Right, and electrically, the data centers don't work without wire and conduit. So electrically, there's
without electricians and the AI doesn't exist.
And I'm shocked by the AI. I read it and heard it, that it takes 100 times the computing power and 10 times the electricity for an AI search versus a Google search. I still haven't wrapped my head around that. But
yeah, I've read some numbers that I couldn't really comprehend about the amount of gigawatts needed in the future for the data centers in the AI. So anyway, that's probably for a different discussion.
Yeah.
That's when the Matrix, happens and Skynet has taken over. That'll be interesting. You know what Skynet is, or ever heard of the Terminator, or you have heard of the Terminator? What about the Matrix? Okay, wow. Naomi would have not heard of any of that. Yeah.
Ouch.
That reminds me, we got to get you a microphone for these, so people can hear you in the background. I don't have to repeat everything, all these questions I ask you. What? We're recording still? All right. This is moving right along here. So, Greg, listen, I appreciate you sharing all this, because it is important that we have leaders like you involved running businesses. Sometimes we forget just the fact that we run a business, the impact that makes on the community. We think of Rotary and the backpack program and other things you might have been involved with, but just running a business and giving opportunities to, if you have one employee, your business is providing a separate service. And I think that's often overlooked, and sometimes that's frustrating, right? A lot of people if they don't run a business, they don't realize all that goes into that. That's true. I just say that just because oftentimes these episodes we forget about that. When I have a business owner on, I forget to bring that up. But as you were kind of knowing this was coming, anything that I haven't asked, anything that you want to touch on that you'd like to share? I mean, before we get done, we'll make sure you can share a little bit about Page Power if you want to, and anything else you're involved with. But anything I haven't asked that I should have asked?
Not that I know of, but
okay.
I haven't really thought about that. I looked at
that question.
I thought,
Well, I'll give you an example. Our last guest came in. I swear she had 20 pages worth of notes, and she was prepared. I was actually a little intimidated by how prepared she was.
I figure I've lived a life if I don't know it.
So, a few more questions, Greg, and we'll let you get back to production and serving our community. So, remember, this is a podcast about Gaston County, and we are trying to highlight good things happening in and around our county and our area. Sometimes it's not just Gaston County, but from your perspective, besides Rotary and Page Power and what you're doing for that community, why would you say Gaston County is such a great place?
I still say it's the people. There's so much that goes on here and this podcast is. You've had organizations I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
Rotaries, I've learned some of those. It's just amazing if you just take 5 seconds and look. There's somebody doing something that you're totally unaware of to help other people and to make this a better place to live? I mean, that's the only place I've ever lived, long term.
Right.
And it's home. It's a great place. I just see. I mean, we can name 150 organizations.
Right.
But
right.
all of them is
They're doing good work.
Yeah, there's a lot of good work going on. There's people who have been philanthropic for years that have supported everything in here, and there's so much that goes on you didn't realize, and you see the same names, and that goes on, but there's so much more that everybody's doing that you don't see.
Sure.
And the named buildings with families, that just scratches the surface of what they're doing that you don't
Absolutely.
know about. So it's not about that.
Yeah, something we didn't realize that this podcast might help with is somebody new comes to the county or somebody comes here onto the podcast. That I said it's a good information source for all these organizations around. I mean, you just go to our website and you can just see all these 150 plus episodes and interviews we've talked about, and you can learn a lot about some of these organizations. Now, the fact that our first episode was over 4 years ago, and we started doing some recaps and getting updates from some of these organizations as well, because 4 years is a long time. We started this right after COVID, not long after COVID started, which it's funny how that becomes a time reference, doesn't it? For so many big events become these time references.
It's a demarc line for
yeah. So
all kind of stuff.
Normally I whisper that word because we don't like to say that word on the podcast, right? Like I did, I know. Maybe we can get really sophisticated. And you can like blurt out certain words that I say that we shouldn't say. That would bring it to a whole new level on Gaston's Great. Okay, see how you can do that. So, got several questions. I love these questions, Greg. I'm especially interested because I knew you when you were 20. So knowing what you know now, whether that was good or not, that's another discussion. Knowing what you know now, Greg, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Be quiet and listen and observe. I still am way more than I should be. But at 20, you're just so reactionary to everything, and you just pop off with utter nonsense and think you know what you're talking about. And I was having a conversation with a 21-year-old the other day, my son, and I'm like, you know so many things at 20 that it just isn't true.
Yeah.
You are certain of the fact. So, we all grow. So mainly is listen and just watch the people around you, because you can learn so much from the people that you surround yourself, if you surround yourself with the right people. And you can learn a lot from people if it's the wrong people, but you're still learning something, maybe not what you need to know.
Yeah, I bet 158 episodes now. I bet 120 of them, when the question comes up, I've made some comment about I had zero perspective when I was 20.
Oh no, and that's you can't help it.
Yeah,
and it's no one's fault. And
I'm afraid it requires just age and experience.
You cannot outlearn age and experience.
Yeah.
So, that's all I've got for my 20-year-old.
Well, no, that's good.
I would tell myself to make a few different decisions if we're going to get specific, but that's a different conversation.
No, this is a family-friendly podcast, Greg. So, we throw these three questions kind of here at the end because I made these three separate questions up because we had some, returning guests, and so I don't want to ask them the same question, but I'm going to ask you the second one, and then we'll get on with it. But anybody look back, anybody really made a gigantic impact on you personally, professionally, just somebody that you think, wow,
you're going to laugh at part of this.
They really, this has helped me get to where I am today.
Most definitely Jim Robinson, my uncle, and John Elkins professionally, and even Joel.
Okay.
I remember sitting at one of the banks we were talking about there, and we're having a conversation about something, and project wasn't going really well, and I guess I can't say that. I'll fill you in the actual details later. It's not bad, but it would involve a different business in town, and there's some roofing issues there. So we're having a conversation, and I made, as I want to do, a smart aleck remark about something, and Joel.
But it was probably true.
It was 100% true. He flopped down a $20 bill, said thank you, and walked out the door. And we were in the parking lot, and he was talking about listening to understand and not to respond.
Oh yeah, wow.
And I
Legit Stephen Covey stuff right there.
I struggle with that one to this day, and you can ask Pam about that. But that's important. Is listen to understand and not just to respond.
Well, as I've gotten older, so I'm not surprised that you said that about Joel, but there have been people. If somebody like, say, I don't know, Don Lineberger has said that to me 10 or 15 years ago, I would have been able to accept that from him,
right,
compared to maybe somebody else who have said that to me. I'd be like, you know what you're talking about. So it does matter, who you're hanging out with, right? Because somebody like, there's certain people would give me advice like that. I would absolutely take it. Sometimes be like, oh gosh, is that really what I do and how I act? And so if it's that obvious to somebody else, and you know what, those are actually blessings if you're mature enough to take that information.
Oh, yes.
And understand somebody's intent, right?
And if your 20-year-old self doesn't have one of those moments, you weren't paying attention. You didn't get what you were being told at the moment, because I had a pretty significant one of those by someone, and it was just a giant gut punch. I thought, one decision had undone a lot of good, and it took a lot more good to fix that. Got to be smarter than that. So.
Yeah, taking advice is hard. What do you think, Rachel? Depends. You have somebody giving you good advice in your life?
Does she have anything to tell her 20-year-old self?
She's not 20 yet.
Week before last. Sorry.
So you're 20 what again? I'm sorry?
22.
22. Okay.
I was listening.
So we'd have to ask you about like your 15-year-old self or something. 2 years is not enough. And 15 is really not a good time to even talk about stuff like that. Oh boy. Now listen, Greg, I appreciate you sharing that. Anything else to share? Any last words? Community, business, any advice you give somebody who want to get involved in the community? Just anything in general you'd like to share before we move on from this?
Everyone can find some time in their life to volunteer for something in the community. Whether it's at your church or at your kid's school or just some random community organization, there's tons of opportunities.
Plenty of opportunities.
Yes. And lots of good to be done. And it doesn't matter. It's not just because you own a business or whatever. If you don't wake up and realize you've got way more than you ever deserved in life and you should share that, then you need to spend some more time looking in the mirror.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, how can I say this? This might be the disclaimer. This is not necessarily the opinions of GSM Services or Rachel Cowart, but I still believe that we live in the greatest country. Our area is terrific. The last 10 or 15 years, I've seen our community just get better. Our view of the world or our community, what can happen in our community, has changed, in my opinion, and it's because of work, people like you that are involved. There's just so many reasons why I think we've gone from we can't have nice things in Gaston County to why not us. Right. That attitude has changed, and so I do appreciate that, because we are fortunate, regardless of what you might be exposed to in the news or social media or wherever. It's never as bad, and sometimes maybe not as good either. One of my mentors, I love this phrase he helps me remember, is this too shall pass, right? Good and bad.
Right. And
then how do you know it's bad? So many times humans have a negative bias, so we want to turn everything into something negative, and many times we look back and that thing we thought was negative turned out to be something that actually in the long run was made us better, or was got us in a better place.
I would agree with that.
So what's Page Power? Anything you want to say about Page Power that you haven't already shared?
We again, we're a utility electrical contractor. Mainly do generators and water and wastewater infrastructure.
Commercial, industrial, mostly.
Mainly industrial utility.
Okay, that's what I figured.
We'll do some commercial if it's somebody we know and a favorite, but we intentionally got out of the commercial construction business 10 years ago.
Well, I think that's a good business lesson. Any young business people out there is, what are you good at? Because we can get pulled.
It wasn't that.
We get pulled into so many things ourselves. and you can get into that no good deed goes unpunished
Right.
situation sometimes in business.
And learning to say no is a good thing.
It can be.
And
Yes, it sure can be.
It took a lot of just thinking about it to say I don't do that anymore, but just the stuff we do is fairly specialized, and it's a good niche for us. It's much better for me. I'm just not. It'll be back to that conversation about the bank that I feel in a few minutes ago, from a few minutes ago. I'm just not into where I have to go to a meeting every week to talk about what's going wrong and nobody has any solutions. It's just, why are you doing it wrong? And that makes me crazy. So.
Well, I want to talk about Rotary real quick. Rotary is a good example. There's a couple things about Rotary that I want to mention. First is, one thing I like about Rotary is it's an organization that still has weekly meetings for the most part. And Rotary also has come to understand the fellowship part and how important that is, because nothing happens in the community positive if you don't have a strong local club and individuals who have developed relationships. And so that fellowship is something that's important in Rotary. And I think sometimes too many organizations, it's just focused on, the work,
Right.
which obviously has to get done. I mean, Rotary is a service organization. But for me personally, one of the best things that has happened for me in Rotary, frankly, is being reconnected with you.
Right.
Because I will admit that I still look forward to going to Rotary every week. The programs are good, and it's okay to go be involved in an organization like that. It's okay to have fun and still serve the community. And so I still
Certainly.
view Rotary that way.
And it is fun because oddly enough, we're becoming the old table. And
You're
it's
going
fun.
on 27 years. I'm going on
27
20
years ago yesterday.
Okay, really?
Yeah, I saw it in the bulletin. Club bulletin,
This year, end of this year, I'll be 24 years. So
So we're getting close to Rule of 85. I think about 2 years. I got 2 years left, I think, to make it work. 3 years left. To make it work.
Wow. Ooh, ew.
So I think
The rule of 85. So
Yep.
that means I'm
hard to believe, isn't it?
that make me officially like 6 years behind you the way that works. So I don't remember
No,
that
I think-
math. I don't remember
I
that
think
math.
it's the same, like for like number, because we're the same age. It's just the difference in just the 3
Oh,
years.
the 3 years.
Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Ugh.
Math wasn't your strong point,
I mean, just engineering. No,
right? So,
I'm lucky I remembered that we had a podcast to record this morning. If I hadn't heard you up front, I'd say, what's going on this morning? All right, so this has been really good, Greg. I appreciate all you do for the community. I appreciate your friendship going back a few years. So when you have somebody that I've known for so long, you never know really how this is going to go. But I appreciate what you've shared, and I do appreciate you, and I appreciate your family, and I especially appreciate Pam because she's put up with a lot for a
yes,
long
she
time.
has. She has.
I'll leave that. I'll
Hope
just
she
leave that
continues
there.
it.
So you were talking about commitments earlier and keeping your commitments, and sometimes I do try to share a book or a podcast or a quote or something. And this week I'm sharing a book I just happened to read. I'm a big John Gordon fan. If you listen to any of these episodes, you'll hear his name. I recommended more than one of his books, but his most recent book is called The 7 Commitments of a Great Team. One of the reasons I like John Gordon stuff is he writes in a manner that's relatively simple. He doesn't overwrite. What I mean by that is he doesn't turn a 150-page book into a 300-page book. He gets right to the point. It's just a good parable about if you're leading a team, an organization, doesn't have to be professional. I mean, it could be anything that you're involved with. It's one I would highly recommend. So again, that's The 7 Commitments of a Great Team by John Gordon. It's his latest. I mean, he's got, probably pushing 30 books now, and they're all easy to read and worthwhile, in my opinion. So we're going to close this one out today. So to our listeners out there, thanks so much for taking time to listen to today's episode. Please continue to spread the word if you can about the podcast. And don't hesitate to contact us here at an email address, which is podcast@gastonsgreat.com. We're always looking for suggestions for future podcast topics and guests. You can find the podcast and subscribe at the website, gastonsgreat.com, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. And please follow us on all our social media platforms. And as Rachel always reminds me, please give us a good 5-star rating. It helps the podcast get noticed. And thanks again to Greg for being our guest today. Gaston's Great is produced and brought to you by Rachel Cowart From GSM Services, I'm your host, Stephen Long. Thanks again for hanging out with us, and please keep coming back to hear more reasons why Gaston's great.